The rain-soaked streets of Seattle gleamed under the streetlights, but inside James Harper's classroom, the world felt like it was caving in. At 47, he sat at his desk, grading papers in the dim glow of a single lamp, his wedding band long gone from his finger. The divorce had been final for 6 months, but the weight of 20 years of hiding still crushed him. For 2 decades, James had played the role of the perfect husband, father, and high school history teacher. He'd loved his wife, Sarah, in his own way, and their daughters, Mia, 17, and Lily, 15, were his universe. But the truth he'd buried since his teenage years in rural Idaho clawed its way to the surface, demanding to be acknowledged. James was gay. Tonight, he'd made a decision. He couldn't keep living a lie. The thought of telling Mia and Lily, though, twisted his stomach into knots. Would they hate him? Would they feel betrayed? He imagined their faces, the ones he'd kissed goodnight for years, turning cold with judgment. The classroom door creaked open, and Elliot Rivera, the new art teacher, poked his head in. At 35, Elliot was a burst of energy, tousled dark curls, a leather jacket, and a smile that could light up a room. Still grading, Harper? It's past 8. You're gonna turn into a vampire. James chuckled, rubbing his tired eyes. Just trying to keep up with these essays. Kids these days have opinions on everything. Elliot leaned against the doorframe, his gaze softening. You look like you're carrying the weight of the world. Want to grab a coffee? I know a place that's open late. James hesitated. He'd felt a spark with Elliot since the younger man joined the faculty 3 months ago. Their late-night talks about art, history, and life had become the highlight of his days. But accepting the invitation felt like stepping off a cliff. Sure, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Let's go. The cafe, a cozy spot called the Hearth, smelled of roasted coffee and cinnamon. Rain pattered against the windows as James and Elliot settled into a corner booth. Their knees brushed under the table, and James felt a jolt he hadn't known in years. You've been quiet lately, Elliot said, stirring his latte. Something's up, isn't it? James stared into his coffee, the steam curling like his unspoken thoughts. I'm figuring things out. Big things. Elliot's hand slid across the table, stopping just short of James's. You don't have to go through it alone, you know? The sincerity in Elliot's eyes unraveled something in James. He wanted to tell him everything, about the years of denial, the fear of losing his daughters, the ache of living half a life. But the words caught in his throat. Instead, he managed, I'm scared, Elliot. Scared of what it means to be me. Elliot's fingers brushed his, a fleeting touch that felt like a lifeline. Being you is enough, James. Whoever that is. That night, as James drove home through the rain, Elliot's words echoed in his mind. He pulled into the driveway of the small house he now rented, a far cry from the family home he'd shared with Sarah. Inside, Mia was sprawled on the couch, scrolling on her phone, while Lily practiced her violin in the next room. Dad, you're late, Mia called without looking up. We ordered pizza. It's cold now. James smiled, his heart swelling at the normalcy of it all. Sorry, kiddo. Got caught up at work. But as he hung up his coat, he knew tomorrow would change everything. He'd decided to tell them. No more hiding. The next morning, James stood in the kitchen, flipping pancakes while his daughters bickered over the last of the orange juice. The domestic chaos grounded him, but his pulse raced. Girls, he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. Can we talk? It's important. Mia raised an eyebrow, sensing the shift in his tone. Lily set down her violin, her curious eyes fixed on him. James took a deep breath, the weight of 47 years pressing against his ribs. I need to tell you something about who I am. he began, his voice cracking. Something I've kept hidden for a long time. Mia's phone slipped from her hand, and Lily's expression froze. James's heart pounded as he continued. I'm gay. I've known since I was younger than you, but I didn't know how to say it. Not to you, not to your mom, not to myself. The silence that followed was deafening. James braced for anger, tears, or accusations. But Mia stood, crossed the room, and wrapped her arms around him. Dad, she whispered. We love you, no matter what. Lily joined the hug, her voice muffled against his shoulder. You're still our dad. Always. Tears stung James's eyes as he held his daughters, their acceptance washing away years of fear. But as the moment faded, he wondered, could the rest of the world be this kind? The weeks following James's confession felt like stepping into a new world. His daughter's acceptance was a balm, but the reality of living openly loomed like a storm on the horizon. Seattle's progressive veneer didn't erase the whispers he feared at school, in the community, among colleagues who'd known him as the dependable, straight-laced history teacher. At school, James threw himself into his work, but his thoughts kept drifting to Elliot. Their coffee dates had become a ritual, each one peeling back another layer of James's guarded heart. One evening, as they walked along the waterfront, the Space Needle glowing in the distance, Elliot stopped and turned to him. James, he said, his voice soft but firm, you're allowed to be happy. You don't have to keep punishing yourself for who you are. James's throat tightened. It's not that simple. I've got the girls to think about. My job. People talk. Elliot. Elliot stepped closer, the salty breeze ruffling his curls. Let them talk. You've spent your whole life worrying about what others think. What do you want? The question hit like a thunderbolt. James wanted to reach for Elliot, to bridge the gap between them, but fear held him back. Instead, he mumbled, I don't know yet. But he did know. He wanted the warmth of Elliot's hand in his, the freedom to love without shame. He just didn't know how to claim it. Back at home, Mia and Lily were adjusting in their own ways. Mia, ever the outspoken one, had taken to researching LGBTQ+ resources, leaving pamphlets on the kitchen counter with titles like Supporting Your Gay Parent. Lily, quieter but fiercely loyal, had started wearing a rainbow pin on her backpack. Their support was unwavering, but James noticed the strain in their eyes when they thought he wasn't looking. One night, Mia lingered at the dinner table after Lily had gone to bed. Dad, she said, twisting her fork. Are you seeing someone? Like a guy? James froze, his heart racing. He hadn't told them about Elliot, not yet. Why do you ask? Mia shrugged, but her eyes were sharp. You've been happier lately, like actually smiling. It's weird. He laughed, the sound easing the tension. There's someone I like, he admitted. His name's Elliot. He's the art teacher at school. Mia's face lit up. The guy with the cool jackets? Dad, that's awesome. When do we meet him? James's relief was palpable, but a new fear crept in. Meeting Elliot meant merging his old life with his new one. Was he ready for that? The next day, a parent-teacher conference brought an unexpected challenge. Mrs. Callahan, a vocal parent with a reputation for stirring trouble, cornered James after a meeting. I heard a rumor, she said, her voice dripping with suspicion. About you. Is it true you're living a certain lifestyle now? James's stomach churned, but he held her gaze. I'm living my truth, Mrs. Callahan. If you have concerns about my teaching, I'm happy to discuss them. She huffed and stormed off, but the encounter left James shaken. By the time he met Elliot for coffee that evening, his nerves were frayed. She's going to make trouble, James said, staring into his cup. I can feel it. Elliot reached for his hand, this time not pulling back. You're not alone in this, James. Whatever happens, I'm here. The touch was electric, grounding James in a way he hadn't expected. For the first time, he let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he could have this love, acceptance, a life that felt whole. But as he drove home, his phone buzzed with a text from Mia. "Dad, Mrs. Callahan's posting about you on the parent group chat. It's bad." James's heart sank. The storm he'd feared was breaking. The parent group chat exploded overnight. Mrs. Callahan's post, laced with veiled accusations about James's inappropriate influence as a teacher, spread like wildfire. By morning, the school principal, Dr. Nguyen, had called James into her office. "James," she said, her tone measured but kind, "I support you, but some parents are pushing for a meeting. They're questioning your personal life." James's chest tightened. "My personal life doesn't affect my teaching. I've given this school everything for 15 years. Dr. Nguyen nodded. "I know, but we need to address this before it escalates. Can you handle a public meeting?" James agreed, though dread pooled in his stomach. He hadn't anticipated how quickly his truth would become a battleground. At home, Mia and Lily were furious. "She's a bully," Mia snapped, pacing the living room. "I'm going to that meeting and telling everyone you're the best dad and teacher ever." Lily, usually reserved, chimed in. "I'll go too. They can't do this to you." James hugged them, their fierce loyalty anchoring him. But as the meeting loomed, he couldn't shake the fear that his daughters would face backlash for defending him. The night before the meeting, Elliot invited James to his apartment. An eclectic space filled with vibrant paintings and mismatched furniture. Over glasses of wine, Elliot listened as James poured out his fears. "I don't want Mia and Lily caught in the crossfire," James said, his voice breaking. "They've already been through so much with the divorce." Elliot set down his glass and took James's hands. "You're not just a dad or a teacher, James. You're a man who deserves to live fully. And those girls, they're stronger than you think." James looked into Elliot's eyes, seeing not just warmth but a fierce belief in him. Without thinking, he leaned in, and their lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home. For a moment, the world's judgment faded, and all that existed was the two of them. The community meeting was held in the school gymnasium, a sea of parents and faculty packed into folding chairs. Mrs. Callahan stood at the microphone, her voice sharp. "We need to ensure our children are in a stable environment. Mr. Harper's recent choices raise concerns." James's hands trembled as he took the stage. He scanned the crowd, spotting Mia and Lily in the front row, their faces defiant. Elliot was there too, his presence a quiet strength. "I've taught at this school for 15 years, James began, his voice steadying. "I've poured my heart into your children's education. My personal life doesn't change that. I'm gay. I've always been gay, and I'm done hiding it." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some faces hardened, but others softened. Mia stood, her voice ringing out. "My dad's the best teacher here. He's kind, he's fair, and he loves us. If you can't see that, you're the problem." Lily joined her, holding up a rainbow pin. "He's our dad, and we're proud of him." The room erupted in a mix of applause and whispers. James's eyes filled with tears as he realized his daughters weren't just defending him. They were fighting for him. Dr. Nguyen took the microphone. "Mr. Harper is an exemplary educator. This meeting is about his professional conduct, not his personal life. I stand by him." As the crowd dispersed, some parents approached James with words of support, while others avoided his gaze. Mrs. Callahan stormed out, her influence diminished but her resentment palpable. Outside, Elliot pulled James into a hug. "You were incredible up there." James laughed, shaky but relieved. "I couldn't have done it without you, or them." He looked at Mia and Lily, who were grinning despite the tension. But the victory felt fragile. James knew the fight wasn't over, not in a world where acceptance was still a battle. The weeks after the meeting were a whirlwind. Support poured in from unexpected places. Students left notes on James's desk, colleagues invited him to dinner, and a local LGBTQ+ group reached out to offer resources. But the backlash lingered. Anonymous letters appeared in James's mailbox, filled with slurs and threats. Each one chipped away at his resolve, but he refused to let them win. Elliot became his anchor. Their relationship deepened, moving from stolen moments to intentional dates. Hikes in the Olympic National Forest, quiet evenings cooking together, moments where James felt truly seen. One night, as they sat on Elliot's balcony overlooking the Puget Sound, James opened up about his past. "I grew up in a small town," he said, his voice low. "Being gay wasn't an option. My dad, he'd have disowned me, so I buried it. Married Sarah, built a life. I thought it was enough." Elliot listened, his hand resting on James's knee. "You did what you had to do to survive. But you're here now. That's what matters." James smiled, but the weight of those lost years lingered. He wondered what his life might have been if he'd been brave sooner. At school, the atmosphere was tense. Some parents pulled their kids from James's classes, citing personal beliefs. But his students, especially the misfits and dreamers, rallied around him. A quiet senior named Theo, who'd never spoken much, approached James after class. "Mr. Harper," Theo said, fidgeting with his backpack, "I'm gay too. Seeing you, it makes me think I can be okay someday." James's heart swelled. "You're already okay, Theo. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." The moment stayed with James, a reminder that his truth wasn't just for him. It was for kids like Theo, who needed to see someone like them thrive. But trouble brewed at home. Mia came home one day with a split lip, her eyes blazing. "Some jerk at school called you a slur," she said. "I punched him." James's stomach dropped. "Mia, you can't fight my battles. You could have been hurt." "I don't care," she snapped. "No one talks about my dad like that." Lily, overhearing, added, "We've got your back, Dad. Always." Their fierce love humbled James, but it also terrified him. He didn't want his daughters paying the price for his truth. That night, he called Sarah, his ex-wife, to discuss the girls. "James," Sarah said, her voice softer than it had been in years, "they're strong because of you. Let them fight for you. They need to." Her words surprised him. Sarah had struggled with his coming out, but her support for their daughters bridged the gap between them. As winter settled over Seattle, James invited Elliot to meet Mia and Lily officially. The dinner was chaotic. Lily spilled sauce on Elliot's jacket. Mia grilled him about his favorite bands, but it felt like family. Elliot fit into their lives like he'd always been there. One evening, as James and Elliot walked hand in hand through Pike Place Market, a stranger shouted a slur from across the street. James tensed, but Elliot squeezed his hand. "They don't get to ruin this," he said. James nodded, his fear giving way to defiance. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was living. Spring arrived, painting Seattle in vibrant greens and blues. James's life had settled into a new rhythm, one where he was no longer just a teacher or a father, but a man in love, a man at peace with himself. The threats had dwindled, and the school board reaffirmed his position, citing his impeccable record. One Saturday, James, Elliot, Mia, and Lily attended a pride event in Capitol Hill. The streets were alive with color, rainbow flags, music, laughter. James had never imagined himself here, surrounded by people celebrating who he was. Mia and Lily danced with abandon, their rainbow pins glinting in the sun. Elliot slipped his arm around James, pulling him close. I'm proud of you, Elliot whispered. You've come so far. James smiled, his eyes misty. I couldn't have done it without you. Or them. The Pride event was a turning point. James began volunteering with the local LGBTQ center, mentoring young people like Theo, who was now applying to art schools with Elliot's encouragement. James's classroom became a safe space, where students could talk about identity, history, and hope. But the true gift was his daughters. Mia, once guarded, now spoke openly about her dad's journey, even writing an essay for her college applications about the power of authenticity. Lily composed a violin piece titled Truth, dedicating it to James at her spring recital. One evening, as the four of them sat around the dinner table, Elliot raised a glass. To family, he said, his eyes locking with James's. To being who we are. Mia grinned. To Dad being a total badass. Lily giggled. To love. James clinked his glass against theirs, his heart full. He'd spent decades fearing rejection, but his daughter's love, and Elliot's, had shown him that the only thing worth fearing was a life unlived. As they laughed and ate, James looked out the window at the Seattle skyline, the Space Needle standing tall against the sunset. He'd come out at 47, after a divorce, after years of silence. And his daughter's reaction? It wasn't what he'd feared. It was more than he'd ever dared to hope for.